Good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here. On behalf of the Human Development Council and Civic Tech St. John, welcome. And thank you to the candidates for participating and to all of you for taking the time to engage in this important civic conversation. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're gathered on the traditional unceded territory of the Wolastoqey and Mi'kmaq peoples. The Woolastoq, the river that connects the region to a much broader homeland, has been a place of life, travel, and community for thousands of years and remains central to that identity today. As we come together this evening, we recognize that the issues we're discussing, community, housing, and well-being, are experienced differently across communities, including Indigenous communities. We offer this acknowledgement as a small but important step in recognizing that history and our shared responsibility moving forward. Tonight's forum is intended to provide a respectful, nonpartisan space for candidates to share their perspectives. The Human Development Council and Civic Tech do not endorse candidates. Candidates are seated alphabetically tonight. For the opening and a few core questions, I'll allow up to 2 minutes. For others, we'll keep things a bit tighter to ensure that we can cover the discussion. Thank you. And now, let's get started. We'll start with the first speaker here. I'm always advised to tell you to eat the microphone and speak clearly, and don't cover the bottom part because that's how it wirelessly gets over to the soundboard. So, let's start with a brief introduction. Tell us a bit about yourself and why you're running.
Hi, I'm Artie Watson. I grew up in Ward 3 in one of our priority neighborhoods. And I know what it's like to go hungry, to the point your stomach hurts. And I understand what trauma can do to a young, developing mind, because I've lived it. In a short span, I lost my father, my mother, our pets, in the neighborhood I grew up in. And the reason I mention that is because I've been doing this for some time now. And I grew up on Churchill Boulevard, which at that time was part of Ward 3. And the government came in and promised us that they were going to refurbish our neighborhood, rebuild it, and bring everybody back. That never materialized. So that has driven me to speak out about the injustice of the marginalized and those who don't always have a voice at the table. In that struggle, I had to find myself, and I found a sense of purpose. At that time, I was dealing with mental health issues, drug addiction, no high school diploma. And that's when I decided to change my outlook. I got involved in politics, watching my community. An estimated 500 men, women, and children got displaced. That's what's driven me. That taught me that something important. Policy isn't about what's on paper. It's about people and the real impact decisions have on their lives. Thank you.
Great. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here and joining online. My name's Eric Savoy. I grew up here in the city, in Lakewood Heights, the West Side. And then when I got old enough to move out of home, chose Ward 3 in the Uptown to be my place to set down my roots and call home. I've got education in business. I've got 2 degrees from the local campus of UNB here in St. John. And I've been really privileged through the support of my family and my community to have had opportunities to further my education, be involved in my community throughout my life. Those who know me here know that ever since I was a young kid, I've been involved in helping the community, everything from March 21st to stop racism in my local high school. I graduated from St. John High, straight through life and getting involved with the United Way, the local YMCA. So I've been very active in the community throughout my life. including standing up for students when I was a student leader at UNB St. John. Through my career at one of a large international firm, I was employed in the local office. I had an opportunity to spend several years in Australia, and that after deciding to return home after COVID, moved home here to become the national leader for human services for that firm. So I've worked with governments across Canada, in Australia and New Zealand on some of the toughest challenges that are facing communities like ours. And I suppose the reason why I'm running for Ward 3 is I'm proud of this community, and I know that we can do better to support each other so that the growth in this community doesn't just benefit the few. I believe a city is built by people for people, and that City Hall should work for everyone. But systems are broken, and we need to address some of the root causes that are making that growth uneven for folks who are doing it tough in the community. And so I want to use that opportunity, the leadership skills and experience that I have, and put that to work for you. And I think that having that expertise at the council table could make the difference in how we look at some of the challenges that we face together in the community. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and why I'm running. Ryan?
Thank you. Apparently I've been talking too much lately. Pardon me. There we go. Before I get started, I want to make sure to thank Randy and the Human Development Council, as well as Mike with Civitech. I don't know if we realize how lucky we are to have these organizations putting these on. We're spoiled. So big thank you to you guys and the teams for putting these on, and of course all of you for coming out. Hi, I'm Ryan. Hopefully some of you know who I am at this point, or have been wasted the last few months. But we've been staying busy. I'm a dad, I'm a business owner, I'm a landlord. Very proud resident of Uptown St. John, of course, one of your options for Ward 3. I believe in a few different things and a few different principles. Namely, I believe in practicality. I believe in the value of experience. And I very much believe in being connected to the community. In fact, it's the way I live my life every single day. When we want to talk about the whys, I have what you call a bias for action. I like doing. I don't sit back. I always teach my daughter, if somebody needs help, you help them. You step up and you do the job when the job needs doing. As we're talking tonight, I'm sure I'm going to touch on those three principles. And when we've been out of the doors, the big three things that I've taken to kind of push for campaign, which again we'll be talking throughout the night. Of course, property tax reform, not lowering property taxes alone. We need actual real reform where everybody in the city, despite your name being on the side of a building or not, pays your fair share. We need community-led public safety. I know right now there's lots of people in this room that have opinions on this, and we need to be listening. If we're not listening to the community, we're not going to be able to deliver what they want, what they know works. And it's going to be different, Oldie, St. John, Uptown, Lower West, and I've heard that it's different in all three. And the last one is transit. We're doing better with transit. But if we want everybody to enjoy and appreciate this great city that we have, we need to start having some outside of the box ideas. So again, we'll be talking about all those things in detail, I'm sure, as the night goes on. And thank you all again so much for coming out.
Good evening. My name's Andrew Miller. I was born here in Ward 3 and lived throughout the different priority neighborhoods as I grew up in a working class family. And so I understand these tough times. And as a single parent who's raised my own 4 kids for the last 15 years on my own, I appreciate the challenges, especially with the economy the way it is these days. I spent my career building businesses as well as working for large corporations. I created one of the first internet companies in Eastern Canada called Maritime Internet, which I sold to MBTEL. I took over their internet division, and I helped to roll out Simpatico across Canada, which is a national ISP. After a few years, I did a spin-off company down in New England with Jerry Pond, where we bought 7 companies from Maine and New Hampshire. I then came back here to start my family. Because this is home and this is where I wanted to raise my kids. went back to work for Bell Alliant, where I took on a senior role in planning and engineering for Bell Alliant across 4 provinces, managing and engineering the rollout of our internet services, telephone, and voice. So I'm used to managing large budgets, complex projects, and working through various teams, unionized, non-unionized, and learning how to appreciate what everyone brings to the table, listening, and then responding. And more importantly, knowing how to make the hard decisions. As well, over the last 20 years, I've served on many boards and committees for the city under appointments by multiple mayors and councils, Planning Advisory Committee, Pro Kids, Plan SJ, Move SJ. So I've been active in the community on these boards. I understand the policies. I understand what's changing, and I understand that, I've been part of that change. And I also, now, the reason that I'm here is to help continue that change and be active in moving it forward. Thank you.
Perfect. Last but not least, thanks everyone for being out here this evening and everyone online as well, to the folks who organized. My name is Mariah Darling. I use all pronouns. I am a proudly queer and trans young professional here in St. John. I'm one of our current Ward 3 councillors currently, and I am running in this re-election. A little bit about myself for folks who may be a little bit less familiar. Born and raised here in the city. I graduated from St. John High in 2012 and from UNBSJ in 2018. From there, I moved on to do a contract in medical research and then spent a few years in the nonprofit system before burning out in that, as some of those familiar may know the feeling of, and currently working on pursuing my HR certification. I am incredibly passionate about St. John and about community in general. I am running in this election because I believe that we need real system change to make sure we have change in policy that the community can feel and can support our community members. It may be, it's a little bit harder to talk about in about a minute, and it may sound a little bit boring, but I think something that St. John especially has maybe gotten ourselves trapped in is doing too much of trying to fix a problem for one person or one individual rather than going back to the source and figuring out how we can fix the issue happening to so many people instead of just the person able and having the energy to get in contact with someone. I think we need to make sure we're building policy for more people, and that also means we have to make sure the council table reflects outside of that. It means we need a bunch of different individuals sitting around with different opinions who are ready to actually work together and listen to each other more than just speak. And I think that's going to be vital moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go back down the line, and now just a really short question in one sentence, if you can. What is one issue you would focus on first?
Give me 1 second so I don't accidentally say 7 sentences. I think the issue I would focus on first is communication. I think at the end of the day, the biggest thing to build many different systems and to help people out is making sure, as an organization, the city has clear, transparent, easy ways to access information, and I don't think we're there right now. I think it's feasible. I think that would be the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak.
Good day. Actually, I agree with Mariah. Communications is very important, and it's something that I've been hearing throughout the ward. And it comes at many levels because people want to be heard and they want responses. And more importantly, we've not done a great job as a city communicating or just giving people answers. Oftentimes they're left waiting, wondering, and waiting for just a no or the answer will come later. Something that simple is something that we can address. Even on our websites, the information it's hard to find, and it's not done in proper ways that you can easily search and index. So people are often left with outstanding questions. So there's a whole bunch of simple stuff that we can address there that haven't come from a communications company. I have a lot of experience in that, and so I think there's huge opportunities for us, easy wins.
For me, I've been lucky enough to be able to be involved in the community, attending the Waterloo Village meetings and listen. The number one thing I would want to do right away is try to get an established network and database amongst everybody doing that hard work on the front line supporting our community. This comes from a story from an organization that on a regular basis will show up the same place, same time, hand out food and take care of people and feed people. One night they showed up and there's another group there. Great, that's a wonderful thing that we have more people helping. But now they don't, do we stay? Do we go? Do we hand out here? Do we go somewhere else? And it was such a wrench into their operations, they've actually decided to move to a different group. Well, what if that other group doesn't come back anymore? So people don't know. So a good, easy, understandable network. Hey, this is the night we're going to do this. Why don't you do Wednesday night? There's already a wonderful impromptu one. Salvation Army does a decent job at it, but they can only do so much. And on the other side of the coin, being able to communicate that to the folks that need that little bit of help effectively and clearly, you know you can go here and get a meal on a Tuesday night. It's small, it's easy, it's practical. It can make a massive difference.
One of the roles that I have had in my career was Director of Planning and Coordination post the bushfires in Australia. And I think one of the top issues that needs to be addressed is housing. I think it's really hard, and what I'm hearing is, you know, there's folks who are already struggling, and some people, sadly, are living unhoused on the street, and others are a paycheck away or a crisis away from ending up in a similar situation. I think there's a lot of good progress that's been made, but I think that the number one opportunity that we have with funding coming from the federal government, some of the recent work that the province has unlocked, is how do we collectively get integrated and coordinated in how we mobilize those resources. And there's sort of, you know, this concept that I've learned in my career around the mix, sequence, and intensity at which we show up for people and support them. So for me, what I'm hearing from members of the community, as well as other people outside of Ward 3 that are really concerned about what's happening in our ward, is that housing is critical to unlocking opportunity for individuals to discover their purpose in life and be part of the community. It's pretty hard for that to happen when you're sleeping rough on the street. And so I would love the opportunity to bring that experience to the table on just how we can work together, because I see a lot of siloed working, and I think that that can be improved to allow us to scale up solutions in the community.
Eric's been reading my notes. So before I begin my answer, I'd like to give a shout out to Jerry Lowe. Thank you for your service, sir. You're an inspiration. And one of the things I'd like to work on in the beginning is housing and affordability, support faster approvals and practical development so more housing gets built, increase the stock so we can increase the tax base.
I think my grade 7 English teacher would have said those were run-on sentences.
Not me.
We'll begin with some of the issues we're hearing across the city, many of which are experienced directly here in Ward 3. Civic Tech is presenting a survey and administering one, and feel free to use the QR code that's on the table or go to either their website or ours and fill it out, because we're having a running tally of priorities that residents citywide are claiming are important. And recently, our last check, it was homelessness, poverty, and police. And they may be identified as citywide issues, but they're surely felt in Ward 3. So I think that speaks to the importance of this conversation tonight and where we're going. So let's start with homelessness. We're seeing increased pressure, encampments, demand on services, and questions about what happens next. The city has adopted an approach, Housing for All, in 2024 that includes outreach, supported sites, and what they call a housing first focus. The question is, in your view, what should the city be focusing on right now? And what would you strengthen or adjust?
I guess that's part of my first answer when it comes to supporting faster approvals for practical development. I believe that there should be a zero tolerance for encampments. People are dying. It's a safety issue, and I think we have the resources. We just need to come together and get it done. And I want to give a shout out to 12 Neighbors and Somerset Acres who provide those types of services. I'm just going to pass.
Great. So that's the number one issue that I feel that really we need to address. I think just to go maybe a little bit deeper, if I can, I think it's understanding our community. You know, housing's a continuum, and I think we need to meet people where they are. And so, building on my earlier answer around the coordination of the efforts that we have, I think it also is, how do we help build that understanding? There's tension in the community around how we respond, and I think that if I can, I guess, support Andrew and Mariah, I think part of that is, you know, we all have different levels of understanding around best practice and what the data says, and so I guess to expand on that, in addition to enhancing how we coordinate the execution of the city's existing plans and better leverage the funding that exists and go after more of it, I think it's also how do we bring the wider community into those conversations and create safe spaces so that we can have dialogue, because it's not helping anyone when we have this sort of polarization. And I think part of that is because we're often coming to the conversation with our individual view rather than coming to a conversation with the intent of learning and trying to understand the shared problem. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to work together towards a better future, I suppose, for the community, and one where there's an abundance of housing in all of its forms in the city.
So, again, just back to the question of what we focus on, what would we adjust? Couple points. First and foremost, trust the experience. I can see 5+ people in this part of the room right now who have experience helping. We need to listen. Now, sometimes that might be a shotgun in the face of passion and caring and knowledge, and you have to be willing to have those conversations, and you have to listen. We've got great organizations willing to do the work here in the city. We need to listen to them, and we need to support them. Are they going to be right every time? From their perspective, absolutely. But we want to make sure to integrate those ideas and that experience into the plan. The second part of that is, of course, inventory. We need to keep building. We need to take that listening, we need to take that learning, and keep putting up units like Steeple View, keep putting up mixed units like top of King Street. We need to give people the chance. Doing the mixed units, integrating folks that do need an extra hand in with the general population is the best chance for a positive outcome. When you see your neighbor go to work, you're going to want to go to work. And then you become a member of society that's productive and contributing. Pardon me. So we can do it. We've been doing it. Somebody in this room told me we just need to do it faster, because I went and I listened. That's kind of my thing. Yeah.
Thank you. So yes, we have got a great first start by having a housing first approach to these solutions. The city jumped in quickly and didn't just pass the buck, which I think is a good thing. And they reached out to the professionals in our neighborhoods in the front lines and listened to them and helped to support them. And so we're seeing some progress. But more importantly right now, what we need to see is the data to understand how effective it is working, and then be willing to adapt and change accordingly, because not everything proposed on paper is ideal. And you know, we can all have the greatest ideas, but if once we apply them in real life, often the results are different than what it seems like on paper. And so this is where we come back around to those professionals and those people that are closest to the problems and engage them. And you know, organizations like Fresh Start and with 12 Neighbors and other organizations that are coming to us with solutions, they're a great part of it. But it's also, now that we've established that, we can engage funding from those other levels of government because we've stepped out in front of it and didn't just wait for someone to hand us a solution.
Perfect, thank you. No, I think, especially around this topic, I think there's a lot of ways a lot of us agree on what needs to be done next. To me, the biggest thing I think I see, no matter which angle we attack first, is we need groups of people, both at the council table and our other levels of government, that are actually ready to work together with urgency on the issue. I think over the last year or so especially, we've been saying the word urgency, but I don't feel it in the actions that are around us, especially from, you know, kind of partners coming together with everyone attacking the issue at the same time to get the best outcomes at the end of the day. I think we need people who, you know, when we're talking about it, feel that pit of anxiety in your stomach, because this isn't okay, and we can't just keep having this come up at forums at every election cycle. We need to have action where we can make a difference and make changes in the lives of folks in St. John. So I think that collaboration and urgency is, you know, the one biggest piece. And the other piece I'll add and try to be brief, and some folks around me in the council table may be bored of me saying this, and I don't say this without recognizing what great work our community groups are doing, but our community groups and nonprofit groups, you know, generally came to be to fill a gap in our system, to be a Band-Aid while we get to a better solution. So we can't nonprofit our way out of these issues, especially when, you know, having worked for a nonprofit, lots of folks are making maybe $25 an hour without benefits on evenings and weekends, working their 40-hour job for 60 hours a week. It's not going to work. So we need folks to really come together and make true system and policy change that are going to make a difference at all levels.
Let's go a little deeper if we can on this one. I know it's a complex issue. I know coordination is called for. I know collaboration is an important thing, but let's try this out with a short response to what should happen when someone has no safe place to stay?
I mean, to put very simply, there should be one for them to stay. I think, not to go aside and around, but I think a lot of these things root back to affordability at the end of the day. You know, if you have enough money, you can find a place to stay, you can find a mental health provider, you can find XYZ, and it shouldn't be that way to get these basic things. We need to make sure, especially in systems and areas like housing, where, you know, if you don't have it, you are in danger. Like, we should have profit regulated on those things, and I think that comes back to a place where we need all levels of government to come together and say, okay, this is serious and we're going to take it seriously because it's an emergency.
Thank you. I think that if you're in a position where you're homeless, you go to the folks that have access to those resources and the knowledge. So going to organizations like First Step and to social workers that know what is available locally that you can access. I think it's important that for our folks to be able to engage with sorry, a little nervous. So I think it's engaging the organizations with that knowledge and expertise. And we've built up some of this inventory of housing, but we don't know how big this problem is. And so it comes back to that data. Once we look at the data, and we know whether it's growing or not, then we know what changes we have to adapt. And then we know whether or not we are able to find options for people. But it's not just a matter of us trying to outsource our way out of it. Like there's accountability required.
Yeah, so like Maria said, perfect world, perfect reality. Somebody becomes unhoused, we find them a place to sleep. Reality of the situation we're in right now, something I've done many times. I put a lot of miles on these sneakers. I've happened a few times just out here. You can kind of tell when somebody's new to it, scared, confused, and lost. First stop, fresh start. Go down, introduce yourself, make sure that people know you exist. Make sure that you're not felt forgotten about. Make sure that people are aware that you're struggling. Second stop, depends what part of the city you're in. You're up this end of the city, get up to the drop-in at Waterloo. Go see Jasmine and the team up there. Get a safe place where you can be warm, where you can get something in your stomach, where you can be safe. Try to recenter yourself. If you're a little further down there, go see Lisa and Mary down at Pulse. There are people there that will help. If you're on the west side, go over and see Jen. These people do amazing work every day. Once you've done that, especially from the Uptown area, pop down and see the Salvation Army, because that list I was talking about, they do a decent job trying to keep it updated. Information can be your friend if you're in that situation. And I've had, like I said, I've had those conversations. People are scared. Some people aren't even from the city, and they're here, and they don't know what's going on. And it breaks my heart every time. I wish we could all do more. But that's it. Get to the people that know, get the resources, and get to safety. And then we can hopefully help them work on the problem from there.
I might just offer a more concise sort of answer. I mean, I think all of us in our lifetimes have probably struggled at some point, whether in some way. And I think for us, you ask a friend, you ask a family member, but we have to realize for so many people in the community, they may not have those relationships. And I suppose it's, what should we do if someone becomes unhoused? Quite simply, we should help them. And we shouldn't judge people for wanting to help them. And we shouldn't not want to help them, because by and large, everyone that I have met through this journey in running, actually the kernel of the conversation is wanting to help their neighbor, wanting to help the people. Now, there's different views, as I said, on how we go about doing that, but we're not the experts. And we've got people working every day on the front lines who are expertly trained and have the relationships and know these folks. And you know, if you're living in Ward 3, like, you know, Minister Hickey, like, I've had the privilege of kind of speaking to him, and I've known him personally. He knows the names of folks living rough, and so just get to know your neighbor like you would anyone else, and help them. And I think we can all play that role, some of us more so than others because of our training and our roles that we play in the community. And I guess that's why I said better coordination, the data, the policy, the services, as Ryan mentioned. How do we connect all that together? But let's change the culture in this city, and let's speak up, because the vast majority of people want to help people.
I agree. The first step would be family or friends. If you don't have that option, it would be maybe these organizations can provide a one number that individuals can call. I do remember at one time you could call social development, and they would find you a hotel room for the night. So I guess that would be the other option. Again, it comes down to supporting faster approvals for development so that we can have emergency housing available.
Could I make a comment? No, Norm, we're just going to run through these questions if you start.
Unless you went out and lived homeless, you wouldn't know what these people really need. You sit out here, you have a house, breakfast and everything. Go out and be homeless for a week. Then you would know. You would know what they're going through. You would know what they need. Some of them don't even know where to go to get help. And according to statistics, 38 people died last year. This is damn serious. This is someone's brother or sister or whatever. They're not just statistics.
Oh, well said, Norm. Yep. Thank you for your point. Yep. Moving on, I want to talk about affordability, the cost of living pressures of housing and food and daily expenses that are affecting many households in this ward. In your role as a municipal councillor, taking into account the role of municipalities, what is one practical step you could take to reduce that pressure?
Provide more funding for food banks and organizations of that nature.
Yeah, so I guess this gets into some of the practicalities of the role of a municipality. So how can we make housing and some of those everyday essentials more affordable? It's about prioritizing our efforts. And I suppose like the city, the municipality has been consistently lowering the property tax rate. That helps, but the cost of rent, housing prices are still going up. And so one of the biggest things that I've observed when I look at all the data and the housing need is that, you know, the ability of people even to pay market affordable rent is not there. There's a large number of people, because I think 45% based on HDC data of the working population in this province don't even earn a living wage. Think about that. These are hard-working individuals who are living paycheck to paycheck, trying to put a roof over their head, pay their energy bills, and have enough, and trying to feed themselves and maybe even children. So I suppose for me, it's around how do we target the interventions, because I think that we need to have more non-market solutions whilst we transition through this period and build the resiliency in the community, both in our people and in our community systems. So I'd like to see more targeted ways that we can make the non-market housing even more affordable. There's a lot of dependence on multiple levels of government to create those units and make them affordable based on what people are earning. There's a massive deficit, I suppose, as we all know, at the provincial level. So I think, you know, at a municipal level, it's how do we prioritize planning approvals? How do we bring people together to look at new partnerships with industry and design? How do we design the housing? How do we work with industry so that we can produce things at scale? Because when you scale production, if anyone's familiar with modern methods of construction, the total cost to build can come down. And when we do that, we can lower the cost for the individual who's seeking a housing solution. So the good news is that there are actually people talking about this in the community, within sort of the different sectors, industry, community. We need to open that conversation more broadly to the community so we can all be part of that solution.
Yeah, so let's bring it back to that word practical. So actual achievable, doable things. And we do have a few of them. Property tax reform. Actually working on getting some of that heavy industry tax money back into our city and not heading up to Fredericton. Helps increase overall, gives us the ability to increase growth, gives us the ability to put more of that money back to the community, help manage with some of those affordability costs. Second, what we're doing, keep building, keep building, keep building. Cut red tape, make it more efficient for buildings to go up, keep encouraging mixed units. Are we doing everything perfect? Of course not, but we have to keep going. We have to go faster. We need things to get streamlined. If we can achieve those things, it's a practical, real, applicable solution of steps that we can use moving forward. And as inventory goes up, prices go down eventually. But we have to keep going. If we stop, as population grows and our tax base grows, that's wonderful, because then that does give us more money and more resources to work with. But we need that inventory to cross the line. So then those people with the expertise who work with these individuals every day can find a spot where they're going to be comfortable. Again, help get them back to work, help get them growing our city. It's all a big cycle. Reform, build, grow.
Thank you. I think an important tool that the city has is the ability to utilize land banking. So when we have dilapidated buildings that are being demolished, the city taking ownership of those, because at that point, then we can control zoning, which we can then also influence developers so that we're building the right mix of housing where we need it. A perfect example of this would be getting ahead of St. John the Baptist School. As we build the new school, that old building is going to be coming up. And so rather than waiting for the province to just put it on the market, having the city engage ahead of time and putting a plan around it and using it to build the proper density, the proper mix that supports that neighborhood. And it'll be the point of revitalizing that part of the city. And so when you control the factors that are within the city from a zoning perspective, as well as from being able to influence the developers to meet the city plan, which is about mixed income, then we have a better solution, and it just doesn't happen. Because right now, a lot of developments happen for other outside reasons. Getting ahead of it would be a good positive start.
You know, very similar to what Andrew just said, but we do, and many folks repeated on the panel, but we do need to help folks build easier and build the right solutions better, because at the end of the day, that's what's going to work. I think when we're thinking about how to and what the city themselves can do as a municipality and what powers we'd have to do right as the new council's coming in, I think a big piece too, along with the growth, and a piece of that is property tax reform, is holding our partners accountable as well. And that's not, I want to be really careful to make sure folks don't think I'm saying, oh, this is a provincial or federal problem, we should throw it away. But when people have been saying for the last 2 to 3 governments that we're going to get property tax reform and we still don't have it, at what point are we going to say really loudly and clearly, you've promised this time and time again? You know, not to be disrespectful, not to be anything else, but making sure, you know, we're not forgetting about the plans we've already had to do. And, you know, that funding is really going to help us do really impactful things for the city, whether that be we can invest in programs in food security or our community partners more. That's where we're going to get that real ability / power to do that and make the biggest difference for St. John.
Next question. And feel free, Mariah, to pass the mic and you can finish last instead of having to answer a question and then go right to it again.
Okay.
Ward 3 is home to many of the services that support people experiencing homelessness. Shelters, outreach teams, harm reduction efforts, a 24-hour homeless hub. Do you think this level of concentration is appropriate? And if not, what would you change or do differently across the city?
Well, I can appreciate why it's set up this way. Naturally, it makes sense to consolidate these resources. But I think that homelessness and some of these resources that people are looking for are distributed throughout the city. So we should have smaller hubs that in each parts of the city, so that we aren't displacing people from their neighborhoods or the places. And I think rather than I guess it's more just trying to support each neighborhood, because it isn't specific to one neighborhood. We may see a higher visibility here, but the reality is that we should be trying to support them everywhere.
I was fortunate enough that I got to be the interim treasurer for Avenue B for a year. Now I'm a board member. And I would recommend everybody in this room to jump at an opportunity to join one of these frontline organizations. The education I received on what folks do, like actually do every day to help, will stagger you. These individuals are the closest things we have to superheroes in our city. I guarantee you from conversations I've had, any of them could make anybody in this room cry in 5 minutes. There are not enough of them. we could have 4 times as many people spreading them out all across the city in every neighborhood. We just don't have these people that are willing to do this. We need to help them because they're helping us. They're helping the most vulnerable of us. So yeah, I'd love to write them a blank check, but even then it would never be enough until every kid is every kid can read in the South End, till every stomach is full in Waterloo Village. We're always going to need more of them. But we need to find other ways to support them because the city doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the money. But there's ways to do in-kind support. Maybe it is helping spreading them out, getting them to other communities. Maybe it is taking some of that burden off them if we can, because there just aren't enough of them.
Kind of building on my theme around systems change. So I was really fortunate that I did a pro bono project in partnership with HDC, United Way, the City of St. John, and social development. So the best solution to homelessness is prevention. We know the root causes of homelessness. We also know the top 3 inflows of homelessness being exits from correction, discharge to community, folks experiencing mental health in the hospital, as well as kids exiting care. So for folks who don't know what that means, youth in our community, which is actually the largest inflow, sadly, because of their situation, the province takes them into their care, and then when they age out of care, they just end up on the street. We now have legislation that means that we can address that, but it has not been implemented to its full extent. So then we all realize that. Like I've had lots of conversations with the different levels of government and all the agencies. We actually took a human-centered approach. We looked at data, how to better use data to measure the impacts of these prevention. We have all the core ingredients, all the core pieces, but nobody wants to put it together so that we can access things like social capital, because we also know one of the biggest challenges of moving to prevention is all of our money is tied up in crisis. Okay? All of our money is like the ambulance at the end of the cliff, right? And so that is not sustainable. You know, the city has worked hard to get us on a sustainable financial footing, and I want to bring the expertise and the resources that I have globally and across Canada in this province together to help the city navigate how we can bring these pieces together and shift our system to prevention so that we live in a city where homelessness is, as the vision says, rare, brief, and non-reoccurring. I think that future is possible because when I moved to Australia in 2015, there were not very many folks living homelessness. I know we can get there again, but we need to think differently about how we solve the problem, and prevention is the key.
At the moment, it is appropriate. However, it's also about tapping into federal and provincial funding so that we can expand into other neighborhoods. It's also about, again, supporting faster approval for practical development so we can build our tax base, so that we can provide funding for these types of programs.
Thank you. So, to me, in the world of what's possible right now, I think it's appropriate to have the services, where they are just because we need them. I think a piece of this too, when we think about the rental crisis we're in and the rising rents, that's not lost on groups trying to find office space too. Accessible, available, that's part of the reality. It would be really nice and easy to kind of wave my magic wand and say, yes, our services are equally distributed throughout the city and everyone has an organizational vehicle where they can travel to places without having to use their own car and all these things. But we're just not there yet. That's why some of these crises that may seem just to do with, housing also affect these other pieces that are also trying to address the issue itself, so it kind of feeds back into each other. And I may get really boring repeating myself over and over, but we really, really can't do anything without a coordinated, urgent response with everyone moving forward, because I think we're going to agree on many, many things up at the table, but unless when we're up at this table, but unless we're at the council table with the same kind of conviction and willingness to listen to each other and willingness to bend on something to get another piece that's more important on a policy instead of just kind of giving up on it altogether. Like, this is what we need for the team coming in to solve any issue we're going to insert into the questions.
Are you satisfied with the current level of bus service, and what would you change?
You're changing up your questions, Randy. So, transit, like I said, is the third one. We've made significant improvements in transit. Is it perfect? No. But any large entity like that, you've got three variables: big, good, affordable. Pick two. You can make it cover the entire city, you can make it amazing, but nobody will be able to afford to take the bus. You can make it good, you can make it affordable, but you're not going to be able to get to every corner of the city. You can make it big, and you can make it cheap, but you're not going to want to take it. So we have to decide. There are ways we can grow. There are ways we can change. Last night out east, there was the talk of the Redhead bus. That existed. The flex buses and the sport did exist going out to Redhead, but the data said there wasn't enough need for it and it was cut. Because we want people to love our transit system. We want developers to want to build on our transit system as a selling feature. Not, hey, bring me the bus and I'll build something. But St. John has great transit. Where are those routes? Where do we want people to live so they can get to work, get to school, get to their community, and be involved? So, is it a perfect system? No. Would I love it to be citywide, free, and every 15 minutes? Yes. But to pay for something, it has to come from somewhere else. The mason jar is only so big. So again, if we can grow that tax base, get the reforms we've been promised for 20 years, we can do more. But we need to be realistic with what we want to do with it.
As a former commissioner of the Transit Authority, I would acknowledge that there's been significant improvements to our transit to date, and we need to continue to invest in transit and make the improvements to services. But it does come down to choices, and it does come down to, as you know, you'll hear a recurring theme, but cities are built by people for people, and I think we need to engage the riders, the people who are using it today, because we want to keep them using it, but we also need to understand where people are living, and a core use of the bus at a minimum is to get to the essential services that people need, their medical appointments, their place of work. People need to have reasonable ability to get to and from, like, recreate, like opportunities to engage with people in the community. And so when you're isolated, if you're stuck at home, we talked about one of the responses to people doing it tough. It's their ability to build relationships and build a community around them that can support them in those tough times. So if you have to live in a far part of the community, and we're fortunate in the ward, we're sort of in the heart of the city. But speaking to folks in the ward, I've heard stories of people saying, what, if I had a car, should take 15, well, not even, they said 8 minutes, I have to take an hour and a half to get to where I need to meet my needs. And so I think we have to kind of understand the uses and as Ryan said, sort of make those intentional investments. And as we grow the tax base, as we grow ridership, we can continue to improve that.
I believe the model's working at the moment. There's always room for improvement. Perhaps it's about building more ridership, and we can do that by reducing rates on certain days, certain weeks, so we can increase the ridership. And again, it comes down to building a better tax base so that we can afford more investment.
Do you want me to go?
I think in terms of transit, as many folks have said, we've come a long way, but we've got a ways to go still. I think there's been many things done with transit, especially over the last few years, I'll say, that have been a game changer for St. John. I think of the app they now have, where at PSA, there's a transit app. You can buy your tickets right on it, slightly cheaper if you buy it on the app. But those kinds of things is what really changes things. I remember, when I was in high school trying to find a bus pass so I could get home from work and trying to make it to the Lawtons in time so I could buy it. Really, these kinds of things sound small, but really make an impact on people. I think transit is heading the right direction. We've got a really passionate team behind transit. Does it need to be more accessible? Could it be more affordable? Could we figure out ways to do that? Absolutely yes, and I think that goes back to looking at the data, to relying on our experts and our really good team we have in place there now to continue the trajectory that we're on, to continue towards that ultimate goal of being, a connected city that really thrives all together.
Thanks. Yes, and just to build upon that point, I guess that we do have experts on the transit board that have been successful in implementing a bunch of new changes and helping us to better understand our needs. I think we need to continue to look at that data because although we've introduced flex buses, it looks like those costs may be significantly higher than what we're experiencing with the traditional buses. Utilization may be better, so there's learning. So we're going to have to continue to adapt, and that's why data is so important. But the experts there will help us. The other thing is in a lot of cities, the parking and transit are normally tied together. Where parking is artificially low, the cost of parking, then transit suffers. So parking should be more, and like in Massachusetts, they would subsidize transit through parking. So whatever surplus comes from that, and so there's a system that causes the ability to be able to invest more, to encourage, right? I think that's what we need to follow the data and look at those examples to see what are other ways we can further tweak the system. There's also the considerations around, if we do get funding from, we've been waiting for a while with the provincial government for a percentage of the industrial tax, but I think that's also another opportunity if we do end up getting a percentage of the industrial tax, being able to invest that, because industry is also sharing those roads and putting independent upon those workers, right? They would benefit from us being able to extend some of those hours to allow people to get to some of those shift places, because right now there's nothing trickier than a person who's barely making enough wage to be able to do it. Well, thank you.
Public safety is a major concern in this ward, but people mean different things when they use that term. What does public safety mean to you, and what is one action you would take to improve it here?
Yeah, thanks, Randy. So, I've lived in one of the most livable cities in the world for 7 years. And there was a lot of things going, and that's Melbourne, Australia. I'm sure people know that. And I had the fortune in my career actually to work with a retired chief commissioner of VicPol, the Victorian Police. And, a lot of what I've learned over time in working in these different cities and countries is it's the investments we make in the communities. Lighting, clean communities, it's the amenities in the community. It's the things that get people out, and as I said earlier, to talk to people, say hello, get to know folks. I think our own police service had also indicated a lot of the challenges that we are faced with are more on the kind of violent crime in those areas, which are a serious concern. But we have to accept the fact that folks aren't feeling safe for a whole range of reasons. And so I'd like to see a more sort of comprehensive response to community safety that sort of sees investments in the community so that we know one another. Because I think when you know your neighbors and you know that folks may be living unwell and maybe have mental health issues, and if they're experiencing that out in community, I think someone on the front lines had used the term, like, you gotta remember the folks who are living unhoused, for example, and maybe experiencing those, this is their living room. They have nowhere else. So, you know, I happen to have some friends who have mental health, but they're housed. And so when they're going through their tough time, we don't see that as a neighbor. So it's just about being mindful and aware that there's lots of folks living in different situations, but there's some investments in infrastructure that we can make that might help folks get that sense of feeling safe when they're maybe walking home late at night, etc. So that's sort of that's my response.
Public safety, feeling safe at any time in night and day. Maybe introduce more community policing. And also, again, support faster approvals so we can build our tax base, so that we can afford to hire new police officers.
Thank you. I think, to put it really, really simply, for me, public safety is folks feeling safe in their communities. And that, I think most of us can agree, is a very multifaceted thing. It is, you know, police and fire, which sometimes is the only thing we jump to, but it's also repaired and safe sidewalks, it's lighting, it's, you know, knowing where to go if you need help. It's having, again, back to the clear communication and knowing where to go to get reputable information, especially in this, you know, age and day of misinformation. I think it's really hard to succinctly talk about public safety because not only is it a big thing, but it covers and touches so many different areas. And I think if we don't think of it holistically, I think that's when we find ourselves in spots where folks don't feel safe because we're only focusing on it from one kind of angle. And I think in terms of the city, again, to repeat myself a little bit, but that communications piece is going to be vital as we move forward. No matter which area we're kind of talking about, if your light's out, you should know where to call and go so someone will come turn it on. If the sidewalk's not repaired, you should be able to report it and be able to go on and find when it's going to be fixed. These different things maybe we don't automatically think of in terms of safety, but it builds on it and builds the trust people have in our communities too.
Thank you. Yeah, just to build on Mariah's point, public safety is about more than just our initial perception of police or fire. It's about walking down the street and feeling safe through lighting, but it's also the ability to know that the streets are cleared. And the sidewalks are clear so that you're not out walking on the streets. Like right now, unfortunately, we have too many people that are walking on the streets that are already crowded in the winter when we're trying to do removals, and we don't have enough resources to clear the sidewalks. And so we have people with parents with strollers, we have people with disabilities, we have people on wheelchairs that are automated, and so all of them struggling to try and share this small part of the street, which isn't safe. As throughout the city, we have many different speeds, which further complicate it. Another thing that I think from a public safety perspective is we realize that we don't have the ability to throw a lot of resources at it. And our police, you know, we want to prioritize them to things that they can most effectively do. So I think introducing red light cameras in areas where we know that we have constant traffic issues, that's a way to automate and take some of that resources off of the police services. But it also raises safety because having those cameras there allow people to feel more comfortable and more safe. Better lighting, and also fixing up the streets. Thank you.
Yeah, so back to the original question, I guess, what public safety means to me. I'm going to give you a very simple answer that's incredibly complicated. Public safety feels like home. A lot of folks in this room know what it feels like to get home and relax and be safe. And that is going to be different, and it is different for everybody here. It's going to be different for every part of the ward. We've got a pretty complicated ward. In conversations that I've had over on Lower West, that's lighting and cameras, because that's what they feel would work. Out east, that's conversations and support for a neighborhood watch, because that's what that community feels like would work. If we want true public safety and be able to feel like they're at home, public safety cannot be dictated. You don't get to tell somebody what you're going to do to make them feel safe and at home. We need to listen. We need to engage. We need to connect to those communities, because we've got a lot of different communities here. So for everybody, I think it feels like home, but what that actually means is an incredibly complicated answer. So we do have to listen.
The city is investing significant resources, including private security, to respond to challenges in this area. Do you believe that approach is working? And what would you do differently or in addition?
To be honest, I'm not sure if it's working. The data isn't in yet, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I understand. And again, I think it's important that we introduce community police officers again. And to do that, we need to build on our tax base. And to do that, we need development to increase the tax base so that we can afford more police officers, more firefighters. Thank you.
I think that the recent efforts by the city to introduce the community safety program, the community street team, the safety team, there has been a report to council, and I think the feedback from businesses has been that they feel that they're not having to call the police, and that folks can come and show up and help. I think the critical thing is that we're not arresting people, that we're moving folks on. My understanding is the team have been trained in how to access other resources, but I think the early reports from, as Ryan said, like everyone has a different definition. So the business community that primarily was really concerned, I think they feel that the efforts have had an impact for them as small business owners. And in terms of whether we should scale that up or change it, I think it's still early. I don't think the response is like we can't police ourselves, into solving that. I think Ryan had made a good summary around different people have different views, and I suppose that's why we have to kind of have a neighborhood by neighborhood sort of investment kind of strategy around what that looks like.
Thank you. So it's really there to accomplish two things. First, improve safety. Second, try something new. This was a new initiative for St. John to have individuals trained in de-escalation versus automatic arrest. Is it perfect? No, nothing ever is. But at least it's something new. So give it some points. We'll work on it. From conversations I've had with business owners in the area, some of the nonprofits, Boys and Girls Club during the day, yeah, they feel connected to these individuals. They're coming into places. They're having conversations. They like it. Move the clock 12 hours, not so much. Some of those folks, maybe that's not the right person to be dealing with this situation. And even some of the folks working for the organization, in conversations I've had, you're out late at night sometimes, put up signs. They don't know if this is what exactly they were signing up for. So maybe it's a training issue. Maybe things weren't communicated properly. I don't know. But it's something new. It's an initiative to try. Let's build on it. So first objective, maybe it's working. Second objective for safety, like we said, let's wait for data, let's have those conversations, let's continue to push that forward and keep trying new things.
Thank you. Yeah, to building on Ryan's point, it is new. It's been going on for about a month and a half, almost 2 months now. So it's hard to really appreciate the degree that it's had an impact. I know from a visual perspective, I get a sense that people are happy to see people in the neighborhood and know that there's attention being paid to it. And I think it depends on the time of day and the part of the city. Unfortunately, there's only a limited resource of folks doing this, and we have a much bigger city, so it's good initially, but I think we need to wait for the data and more importantly, look at other best practices and see if there's other things that we can introduce to be able to augment it, because I don't think it's the single solution. I think it's a great first start, but I think we need to look at the data and adapt, because I think we'll find that there's gaps.
No, to build a little bit on what Andrew just said, you know, there isn't a single solution really kind of resonated with me there, because I don't think any one thing is going to be the miracle we've solved it. But I think trying something in the absence of doing nothing is important too. And just through talking with folks, there's, at least to me, been some positive reception of the program. I think the one piece that I'm happy with is looking at the number of calls that are further escalated past the community safety team in their first report kind of back to council, which is available on the open session. Less than 10% of calls were then escalated to police. So whereas before, usually the only place that folks knew to call to get some help were, the 911 or the police, now we have that other kind of, maybe not perfect, but a little bit better stopgap that can stop some things from escalating that don't need to at the end of the day, and maybe direct folks to places where they can actually get the help and resources they're looking for. That being said, I think it's important to continually check the information and the data we're getting back and the outcomes that people are seeing, because I think we need to be ready to adapt any plan or policy to get the outcomes we want versus on paper doing it enough.
Ward 3 is seeing renewed interest from young people, professionals, and some retirees from the valley who want to live on the peninsula, close to jobs, amenities, and culture. At the same time, this ward includes some of the highest levels of poverty and housing need in the city. How do you ensure that growth and investment strengthen the community without displacing or excluding the people who already live here?
A nice simple question, Randy. I think growth is good, but balanced, sustainable growth is what works and doesn't break things. I think that's true within communities and organizations. I think part of that is, as a city, making sure we are setting up good development, affordable development, to be able to happen without having to jump through too many hoops for folks to get it. And I think that other piece is really, again, working with our other levels of government, with our community partners, making sure that folks who are trying to find a place to live, if they can't afford a $2,000 apartment, that shouldn't mean that you have holes in it and it's not a safe place to live. Being someone who rents an apartment myself and feeling the rent go up and up what feels like every month is really hard. And looking for apartments in our community and seeing places that really don't have the care in them or the compassion for people who are living in them either. We need to make sure that as a council we are using whatever mechanisms we can to make sure we have safe, affordable homes, and bringing folks who may have more abilities and authority over the issue too along with us so we can be the most impactful the fastest. Because I think I get a little bit worked up about these things because I think we need to move a lot faster at the end of the day.
Good day. So, you know, I think a big part of this is zoning. When I think back to when I was on the Planning Advisory Board, when new developments come in, and when we, you know, a big focus is on mixed income. Part of that is it helps to give a good mixture of different variety of housing, and with it comes eyes and support. Another part is when you look at the Southern Peninsula, for instance, if you take vacant lots and put them side by each, there's almost a mile of vacant lots. So there's a lot of opportunity for development, but those are also areas that become sketchy and scary for some folks as they're living beside them or having to travel through them. I think another consideration is around housing. People are fearful of, they're happy to have houses or just a place to stay, and they're not always engaging the tenancy acts or going through the tenancy boards. So right now with there's an opportunity to there's a survey for housing where you can have your input and with the like I think in inspections for housing, I think that housing inspections should be done the same way as restaurant inspections are. I think they should be public and available, whether they're done by the provincial inspectors, whether they're done by city inspectors or by fire inspectors. Taking that information and publishing it, making it available, I think that makes all the people renting more informed. And I think it also holds the people that are renting these houses not only accountable, but if they're doing the right job and they're addressing their homes and they're sustaining them and keeping them up, that's a validation that's a good landlord. So I think embracing that system and having transparency.
Yeah, so this question actually hits about as close to home for me as you can get. I'm a landlord. I'm a landlord on this street. I have been for 15 years. When we bought that building, I could stand in the back parking lot and see 7 empty buildings that were condemned, had to be torn down. There was no Peel Plaza, there was no police, there was no brand new liquor store. It was a spot. And I've seen over that decade and a half things push up the street. But I also live my beliefs. Majority of my tenants have been with me for over a decade. Yes, there are some decent landlords. Because we don't arbitrarily jack up the prices. Because we don't run people out just so we can get somebody else in. We've managed to create a community. We've managed to create a building where if somebody's bothering you, you go talk to them about it. And it's great. I would be incredibly concerned if we immediately threw into a system where we're going after buildings. Yes, some of them are pretty rough in the city, and I'm not saying they're not. But we recently had a building on Elliott Road, and all of a sudden, we have 26, I believe 26, Carmarthen, sorry. All of a sudden, because we now paid attention, somebody who at least had a roof over their head, and it might not have been perfect, well, they're gone. Or take a small landlord like me and a really angry tenant, and I actually have one. And funny enough, they're angry because I was too good of a landlord. And then all of a sudden, they decide to write a horrible review, and my business falls apart because I'm just trying to do the right thing. The other side of the coin, mixed housing, mixed housing, mixed housing, mixed housing. When an area does improve, and improve's not exactly the right word, I guess when the area gentrifies, if we're building spots for those people to stay, they can add to the community, not take away.
Ryan, can I ask a question? When you improve the building, you get more taxes on you?
I don't think I'm allowed to answer.
No, sorry, Don. If there's time and time permitting, but we usually just try to run through some curated questions that people have submitted.
We'll talk after.
Awesome. I think just building on everything everyone said, I think we need clear targets, and yes, we need mixed, like, all the things that we've been talking about are well evidenced, and we've been talking about them. I think it's the urgency and the intensity and being clear on the goals and executing and leveraging the resources to build multiple forms of housing on that housing continuum, everything from supportive housing all the way to market affordable. I think if we were to set our targets on the non-market housing and meet those and stabilize people's housing situation, we'd probably see a lot more private investment and even more people come. So it's kind of like the cart before the horse. And I find we've got to do a better job at not compartmentalizing the effort, because we kind of treat like the non-market developers, the community developers over here, and then you've got the private developers, and it's like never shall the two meet. But I've seen in other jurisdictions where community housing operators actually acquire and own equity in private developers. Like there's a percentage, and right now we're dependent on the incentives from our provincial and federal governments to create that. But I think if we could think outside the box about how we come together to deliver these solutions with the urgency that Mariah talked about, I think we'd bring a lot more stability to the situation, and it would probably unlock some of the private developers' ability to move forward with their projects, and that will help everyone as we continue to increase supply again, as Ryan also noted.
I know what it's like firsthand to go through a gentrification in your neighborhood. So I think it's really important to allow these people a seat at the table. I think we're in a great position to build the Peninsula Uptown core with development. And I think there's a program called the New Brunswick Home Ownership Program. So if we allow individuals the opportunity to own their own home, that may be another option as well. But I do believe it's all about build, baby, build. Faster approvals, build. The more we build, the more we have, and the prices will come down and make it more affordable.
There's a lot of praise earlier, deserved and well earned by the nonprofit sector in this community. I think it's been acknowledged that much of the day-to-day response to social pressures is carried out by community organizations, shelters, food banks, harm reduction services, youth-serving agencies, and community centers. In your view, is the city doing enough to support that work? And if not, what would you change?
Well, in an ideal world, I think we'd all love to see the city be able to provide more, but from a practical perspective, it's about balance. I think that if we're looking at these organizations, there's opportunity for us to do other things in kind, different services, whether it be land, buildings, or shared resources like access to computer and reporting and stuff like that, those type of organizations could take advantage of. I think there's also an opportunity to partner with St. John Energy, who's doing a lot of good innovative stuff regarding power. Their new opportunity with solar, by allowing folks to be able to install and put that against their bills. I think that the city could collaborate and help these agencies, because part of that is the established credit or the commitments for contracts. So by the city extending contracts would allow for those type of solutions to be implemented, because they'd have the guaranteed revenue that might help to support those sort of initiatives.
See previous superhero comments. No, of course. While there are hungry kids, people that aren't getting the education they need, seniors that are going without, we will never have done enough for any of these organizations. And I also know every one of these organizations would love to become obsolete. They would love not to have to be here, and they'd go do something else, much less stressful. As Andrew mentioned, there are ways to do support in kind because the mason jar is only so big. There's only so much money in it. So that ties back in with everything else we talked about. Working on the province to actually get true property tax reform, more funding coming in, going after the heavy industrial tax back to the city, more money to do more with. Cash is king, unfortunately. The more we can get, the more we can grow, the more we can support our communities. Like Andrew said, in kind. Equipment, space, expertise, marketing, whatever we have to help and support, we can do. And again, I've got a bit of a unique perspective here as well. One of the things that I do for a living is nonprofit fundraising. I'm a fundraiser. I'm good at tracking down money, working with community partners. And I'm actually lucky enough that I've worked with one of the community groups already, and I'm starting to work with 2 of the others as well. It's already been said tonight, people want to help people. Most people are inherently good, and they do want to help. So people in this room can help, community can help, the city can help, the province can help. We can find those solutions, but it's never going to be enough.
Yeah, I think, the city is doing what it can, and it is a question of resource allocation. I suppose the opportunity that we have going forward, and this is something that's been done elsewhere, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Yes, there's property tax reform, but as everyone has mentioned, that's not in direct control of the city. What is in our direct control is the ability to look at different financial instruments to mobilize capital. So yes, the fundraising, the philanthropic, there's also impact investors, there's also, the funding that we do provide. And I suppose in the immediate short term, I know that there's a lot of people that want to contribute, but we need a plan, we need clear outcomes, we need an ability to measure those. And so, as I said earlier, we've got all the core ingredients. We have a university over at Tucker Park, which is how, we're investing in an asset with the Health and Social Innovation Center. There's organizations across the province investing in that asset, and all of the resources there, if we leverage those with the expertise on the front lines and the city as a facilitator and a convener, we can access new sources of revenue. I know people say it's hard, but anything worth doing, anything worth doing, and often the right thing to do is oftentimes hard. And so, I guess this is why I'm running, because I hear from the folks who maybe don't have the familiarity with those structures saying, oh, it can't be done. And I'm here to tell you it absolutely can, and we can do it. And that's a big reason why I'm here right now.
In a perfect world, yes, it would be nice to be able to provide unlimited assets. However, we have a $205 million budget, so I think readdressing the issue with fair taxation with the province, and again, building our tax base, and maybe introducing incentives to developers to build. So the more we have, the more taxes we can generate, and we can provide more funding.
No,
I didn't, right? If I'm repeating myself, someone yell. So I guess as we stand right now with what we have, I think we're doing what we can in terms of supporting these community centers and nonprofits. I think, again, if I had my magic wand, everyone would have as much money and resources as they needed to solve or work on whatever issue and whatever sphere they're in. I think we need to look at that kind of long-term goal of further supporting these groups and systems. And I think that is, you know, as this next council comes in, like the planning, the strategic plan, and the overarching kind of goals of council are going to be super important and not as shiny to say things about because they're not as concrete items to grab and say today, but making that priority and precedent that as we grow our tax base and as, you know, hopefully we get that tax reform we are asking for and again have been promised, that we're saying our priority as a council is the community. And that's through these community organizations, our nonprofit partners, recreation, arts and culture. That's the side we really need to say as a council. As we continue to grow, this is what's going to make it sustainable and beneficial to our community at large.
Recent federal changes will limit the number of foreign people that can come to New Brunswick. A study permit, temporary foreign workers. And newcomers are choosing where to stay based on housing, affordability, and their overall experience in the community. What's one decision you would make that would help people not just come to St. John, but to stay, particularly in this ward?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things we need to be mindful of here. When we want somebody to stay, it needs to, once again, feel like home. So they need to feel safe. They need to feel good in and connected to their community. Thankfully, we live in a country, a province, and a city where we are a tapestry, not a melting pot, and I'm particularly proud of that. So encouraging folks to come, find a community, find a home, helping to encourage places like the Newcomer Society, help encourage celebration of cultures within their own pockets. But then taking those groups and integrating them, celebrating them, and making them part of our proud city will give them pride to be St. Johner, not just from where they are, but for who they are now. You give somebody a home, you make it comfortable, and you share it with them, people are going to stay. This place can be pretty awesome a lot of the time. We just need to help show them. And I'm not just saying that because I love all the food they bring.
Yeah, I think our newcomer communities bring add to the vibrancy of our neighborhoods. I also, as a volunteer, oftentimes some of the first people to raise their hands are newcomers to the community because they want to meet those of us who have called St. John home all our lives, and I think one of the things that we need to do, as was said, is make sure that we're celebrating diverse cultures in the communities. But not just, having them experience, our culture, but us experiencing parts of their culture that they bring when they settle and make St. John home. I think the other thing that's not talked about openly is there are unconscious biases in our community, both in terms of some of the things that we talked about people who are falling on tough times and experiencing things in their lives. There's sort of stigma there, but also around our newcomers, because one of the things that we haven't talked about that our city puts funding into is workforce development and our ability to help people navigate the jobs market. And we need to be making sure that we have pathways to good paying jobs, and that the city is welcoming and a place where everyone feels like they belong.
I think making them feel welcome, giving them an opportunity to participate, and also making them feel safe. And we do that by development. And when I say development, more faster approvals for more housing, build our tax base, so generates investment. We need to attract investment in our community from organizations and businesses and industry. And I think if a newcomer feels safe, we have some of the most beautiful landscape along the coast. This is, for me, I believe that development is going to make people want to stay when they have opportunities, more opportunities for job opportunities and housing opportunities. They're going to stay and when they feel welcomed. And I think we're doing a good job on that part. Thank you.
I think for me, this one's like the answer to this one is very similar to my last question. The things that make people not just come to this city but stay often go back to those quality of life things. You know, a job or an opportunity has brought them here, but it's those kind of other moments that keep people here. It's finding your community, it's finding your hobbies and your passion and the teams you want to be on and, you know, the places you like to go, the bars you like, the different things. And if we make those kind of available, accessible, and safe, that's what keeps people here, whether it be newcomers or folks born and raised here. That's how we keep folks in St. John and continue to build on our community to make it, you know, the best we can be for everyone. At the end of the day, when people are invested in our community and aware of what's going on and care about their neighbors, we build a better community, and it's easier to do.
I agree, and I guess that's the important part is establishing those connections and making them feel included and part of the community. I know I own a co-working space uptown, and we're right next to the Newcomer Center. So a lot of the folks going through there, they're trying to find their fit. And it's great that they have a lot of supportive people that are also newcomers, but they also have different interests. And so on my trivia team, we have someone from Germany. You know, there's folks that are into karaoke and into axe throwing. And that's where they found their niche. It wasn't necessarily along lines of just where fellow people from their countries, they want to integrate themselves into the community. So it's how do we establish those opportunities? And as I was mentioning with U-Station as a co-working space, a lot of these opportunities for newcomers are often as entrepreneurs. And so having a space where they can come in and work out of that allows them to see other people that are starting out in these businesses or have a bit of experience and can share those experiences, that's very valuable. So when they graduate from those courses, the next stop is coming to talk to us to understand what those opportunities are. Thanks.
It's a lot of agreement tonight. Let's try this one out. Where is the city underperforming right now, and what would you fix?
I think the city has a lot of good intentions and plans. I think where we're underperforming is the execution and the ability to deliver the results. And that's not any one individual's fault. A lot of it comes down to perhaps a lack of resourcing and perhaps unwillingness to consider different ways to resource. And there's been some examples shared here this evening. The other part of it is understanding the urgency and treating things in the crisis situation that we are and not getting so hung up on compliance. Like, let's just think of COVID. Like, all of a sudden, rules, like things that were like insurmountable went away because of COVID. Okay, and we got things done because everyone's life was at risk. So, you know, I'm sitting here as someone who worked in an emergency crisis organization that was rebuilding communities that were burnt to the ground, and then COVID on top of that, having to have built a whole of government's coordination effort to execute and deliver real results, and we were held accountable. I had to report every week to the premier of that state on what was done. They wanted to know how much money was in people's pockets, whose houses were every day. So it's not, I think the big piece that we need to focus on, we've got our finances stable in terms of our general operations. I think we now need to kind of focus this next council on how do we build the capacities to execute and scale on those plans and things, and we have seen some promising results, and we need to kind of scale that out.
We're underperforming in safety and dealing with the drug crisis we're having. And the city can't solve that alone. We need resources from the provincial government and the federal government. I've seen firsthand what addiction can do to family and friends. We need more rehabilitation beds. We need more long-term facilities to help these individuals build their lives. And I'm living proof that it can be done.
I think the biggest way, to me, the city's underperforming, and the biggest opportunity, again, to sound a little bit like a parrot, is that communications piece, is that clear, accessible, you know where to go to find the information, non-politicized information just there as an organization. That is vital for people, and especially building that trust with the community that helps folks then buy into the community and give back to the community themselves and continue to kind of ripple out from that, making a strong environment for everyone to hopefully get to a place where we're not all kind of struggling to get by, but we're really able to thrive together. And that's what's really going to make a big difference at the end of the day. And I think kind of connected but a little bit different to that comms piece is, making sure we're doing things and letting folks know we're doing things for outcomes, and reassessing if what we're doing to try to get intended outcomes is doing it or not. Because I think reassessing things and communicating, hey, we're trying to do this, and I think we may need to shift to actually get there, is really important, again, for that trust and strong community and actually solving the problems that we have.
Thanks. I think one of the big ones that builds a bit on what Mariah is saying in communications, but I think it's also engagement. We have seen engagement diminish, whether it be participation in giving feedback. I think there's a perception that a trust has been broken. We're not seeing as many people come out and participate in things. Take elections, for instance. We're seeing less people vote. We're seeing less people come out to see or even watch these streams online. The numbers are quite low. I was hoping to see more, right? And I think that as a city, part of that communications is how do we rebuild that trust, right? And how do we help folks to feel like their opinions matter? There's people come out and they'll participate in a study for parking. That was published a year ago. It was done a year ago, but it still hasn't been published yet. And so people are waiting for the results, when the reality is that there's actionable outcomes that would actually improve things on the streets and affect people today. And so it's that delay. There's a sense that it takes too long for things to be actioned. Being part of Plan SJ and the South End Peninsula Plan, there's a lot of stuff that isn't actioned still. And that's over 15 years ago. So we need metrics that are measured. We need to be able to communicate to people that it's happening and that their communications was valued.
Yeah, so I agree with Mariah and Andrew, but there's a simple answer to that. That's the counselor's job, to be connected. The thing I hear so much that it actually pisses me off is I don't hear from my counselor. My emails are not answered. My phone calls are not returned, with one exception, Jerry Lowe. And people are terrified that he's not going to be here. People are scared because they can't get their counselor. Every day I hear it over and over and over and over and over again. People are feeling ignored. Community groups are feeling ignored. They're reaching out and they're not getting anything back. I do that now. I'm there now. I'm sitting with these people now. And they're asking me to try to fix it now. And I can't. I can only do so much. I don't call Jerry. And it's horrible because people are scared. We need to commit that we're going to be there and we're going to be available. That's why personally, I've promised that at least one afternoon every week, I'll be sitting at a table down by the fountain in Market Square. Some people are scared to call because they don't get a call back. Some people don't have access to technology. You want to come down and yell at me? Come do it in person. I worked in the bar industry. I've been punched in the face before. That fear doesn't help anything. It drives disconnect, and it takes so much away from our amazing community.
Time's flying by. A closing question before closing comments. What's one decision that you would be willing to make that might be unpopular but necessary?
Yes, if you change this question a little bit too. The first one, I think, would be the honest answer. This has come up a few times every forum. You're never going to make everybody happy all the time. But if you're there, if you're having those conversations, if it's unpopular, know why. What's the reason? If people know who you are, they're going to tell you. And hopefully it's not a punch in the face. Hopefully it's, hey, Ryan, this is why I didn't like that. There might not be a legitimate reason because we are training our politicians to say yes to everything and then crucifying them when they say no. So yeah, we still have to be able to say no. But if you're in the community, if you're wearing out the rubber on your shoes, if you're listening, and you truly believe in something, you should be able to explain it to constituents. We used to be able to disagree agreeably. I'd love to get back to there. So again, hate to say it, but the first decision the new council makes is not going to be popular with somebody. It'll be on news chasers. You'll get the angry emails. But we can't hide away from that. We have to embrace it. Loneliness kills, isolation kills. We need to be counselors and represent our people and pull people together, not push them apart.
Yeah, I suppose my, maybe this would be unpopular. I know a lot of folks want to focus on continuing to grow, and I think that's really important, but I think it would be to ensure that the priority of this next council is on three things, and I'm going to be relentless about this. It's housing that people can actually afford, neighborhoods that feel safe, and then ensuring that folks have opportunities. We need to care for the people who are here today, people who have made commitments to this city, and that will help us with the growth. And so to me, it's focusing on the folks that are right in front of us who need help today, because when we help people build that resilience and be part of this community, we can collectively kind of work on that growth. And that's not to say that growth and development is not a priority. I just feel that we need to address the urgent situation that's happening in Ward 3, because we hear it in the ward and external, but nobody wants to acknowledge the systemic things that we need to fix. And some of the stuff, because the city is not that big, we'll see the impacts and results pretty damn quick, to be honest. This isn't Toronto where it takes like a really long time for those changes to show up in the population. We're small enough that we'll likely see the results pretty quickly. And we, as I said, we've got amazing organizations doing the work. We know the solutions. I think we just need to really focus, take care of people, and then get back to the original programming and full steam ahead from there.
I don't think we're going to make everybody happy, but I believe that it's possible to make decisions that's going to help grow the city and help each individual living within our community. And I believe that perhaps maybe supporting certain developments may draw some flack. I'll speak, for example, with the data center. That seems to be a hot topic lately. We need that type of investment, but again, I think that the community itself that it's impacting should definitely have more input. And if there's another area that we can look at to have that type of development, then let's do so. Thank you.
I think at the end of the day, you know, no matter who's at this next council table, there's going to be a lot of tough decisions to make. And as long as you're ready to read the hundreds of pages of the packet, to listen to what's going on in front of you, to pay attention at the meetings, which is a huge one that not everyone does, but to really listen to the people in front of you, like then, and you can put your head on the pillow at the end of the night, knowing while you may not please everyone, you've made a decision to the best of your ability, and that's really, you know, all one individual councillor can promise at the end of the day. It may be boring and not so flashy, but I know when I'm sitting there at 9 p.m. feeling like, you know, I'm one of 3 people paying attention by the end of the night, we need a little bit more than that around the council table.
That's a good point. And I guess having worked in large organizations, sitting around these tables, making these hard decisions, you go back to the data, you go to the experts, and ultimately, as a councillor, even for a ward, at the end of the day, we're responsible for the best decisions for the city overall. And so not everyone's going to be pleased with those decisions, but I think going back to communications, as long as we're able to communicate to people why we're doing it in a timely way, or allowing for people to understand that that this will improve outcomes in ways they hadn't expected, or you know, finding opportunities to, I guess, just. Sorry, I get distracted. Yeah, the important part, I think, is the communications, being able to make people aware that this is not going to be for everyone. And at the end of the day, you know, everyone is making a decision that someone isn't going to like. So that's not an issue from my perspective. That's something I've dealt with a million times before.
Thank you. It's time for closing statements. I'll allow each candidate 1 minute to sum up and make their pitch.
Are we allowed to ask questions? We're the taxpayers.
Yes, you are, Norm.
Well, look at these people all come, I'm sure with a question, and you've been asking all the questions, and I understand. But we're the taxpayers. We're going to decide if you people get a vote. There's questions out here. Don't we get any time? It's 8 o'clock.
I know it's 8 o'clock, and it was a 2-hour forum, and
We've been here since 6 o'clock waiting.
and you have indeed, and I'm grateful for that. This,
We deserve questions.
well, we're going to shut this down because we're recording it, and it was a 2-hour session. But if you want to ask questions, perhaps people would stay and be happy to answer them. It's always a struggle when we try to organize this. If we open it up with 6 candidates, it can take more time than maybe most people are prepared. People have set aside 2 hours to be here tonight. It's live streamed, it's recorded for them. And look, if you have questions, I'm sure these very able candidates will be prepared to try to answer them for you. So, we started with Artie on opening comments. Mariah, do you want to start with closing and then work towards Artie?
I guess where I want to kind of leave everything with is, at the end of the day, for this next council, whoever ends up being on it, I just kind of want to put my plea out or inspire folks that we need some urgent, actionable change that people can hear and feel. And I think, you know, when it comes to councillors, the biggest way we're going to be able to do that is coming in ready to be a part of a team. Nobody's going to kind of be able to steamroll in and completely solve anything. We're going to be 10 councillors plus a mayor sitting down at a table trying to figure out where our priorities are going to be over this next period of time, and the way we're going to impact the most people in St. John is by, you know, doing it together and listening to each other and doing all these things that sound like we're going back to kindergarten, but sometimes feels like we really do need to remind people. And you know, I want to be part of that systemic change for St. John. I want to be a part of that table to make sure, you know, we have voices heard that aren't just from business or aren't just kind of teachers around the table that seem to be the 80% of the demographic. We need folks, we need a council table that reflects St. John in order to make the change St. John deserves. Thank you.
Thanks. I've spent the last 20 years on different boards for the city's committees, and through that, I've been able to contribute. I've been able to participate. More importantly, I've been able to listen and engage with the public and understand what the needs are, and actually see a lot of these changes through. Right now, you know, a big part of that is listening and responding. I've built businesses. I've managed complex budgets and worked with diverse groups to solve problems. But what I'm hearing from folks is that they want accountability and they want to see real progress. They don't want to see more plans sitting unactioned. They want to see measurable results. They want to see these things being implemented. And that's been my life, is addressing problems, solving them quickly, and you know, creating opportunities for everyone else through being able to bring that attention. And more importantly, to be able to collaborate with all the people around the table. It's not just my opinions, it's working with them to help them see the opportunities that they may not normally have.
Hi, I'm still Ryan. At the beginning of the night, I said I was going to talk about 6 things. 3 values and 3 planks of a platform. Practicality. Enemy of the good is the perfect. Do the thing. Make the situation better. Learn, take the data, do better. Repeat. Practical, achievable solutions. It's municipality. We can be on the ground and we can make these changes. Experience. I've built my life and my career off of jumping in and saying yes to opportunities for my experiences because I value it so much. Everything from being an electrician, zipline tour guide, financial advisor, to fundraiser. And I know that I'm never going to have all the experience. If your elected official is the smartest person in the room, get a better room. I found that you find those people, bring them together, and get their practical solutions and get them in place. And I talked about being connected. I do wear out a lot of sneakers. Every May I buy a new pair of red shoes. I'm in the community centers. I'm listening to the actual people on the streets. I'm very proud of the fact that I'm a Rotarian. I sit on a number of boards. I'm there every chance I get because that's what we should be doing. And I promise that we talk about 3 planks of the platform. Tax reform, which we know has been a 20-year fight, but we need to keep pushing that boulder up the hill because if we stop, it's going to roll back down. Public safety. Community-led public safety, not dictating what safety means to you, but listening to what it means and putting that in place. And keep pushing on transit so people can be involved in our community, participate in our community, and we're all better for it. So that's why I'm here. And the honest answer, I want this city to be a place that when my 8-year-old daughter grows up, I don't have to send her away, and she gets to stay. That's my selfish reason for why. Thank you.
When I first introduced myself, I noted that I stepped up because I have relevant experience throughout my career working across jurisdictions and recognize the need in our community. And I think what I'm hearing, folks aren't feeling heard. There are lots of community organizations that are doing heroes work that we don't recognize. And I think that what I bring to the table is someone who's able to see the systemic failures in the ability to mobilize those resources in different ways, because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And I think the way we get different results is by listening to the community, trying new things, but the things that are working, do more of the things that are working, scale those things. The things that aren't working, stop doing those, redirect those resources into the things that are doing better. But also accessing resources that maybe we haven't been accessing because maybe we haven't had those experiences locally. And so I guess I'm bringing sort of that international experience that from other jurisdictions in Canada and abroad that could meaningfully help us get started on scaling up the things that we know are working and desperately need to scale, because we don't have time to wait. We don't have time to wait.
As I said in the beginning, I grew up in Ward 3, in one of our priority neighborhoods. I didn't come from comfort. I came from struggle. So, Ward 3 has one of the highest poverty rates in New Brunswick, and the challenges associated with that leads to mental health addiction, instability. I was able, by the grace of God, to overcome so much challenges, and I'm truly grateful for that. And at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the people we serve. It's about making sure when we make decisions, people are seen, heard, and considered. And that's what I'll bring to the council table. I'll show up, I'll listen, and I'll do the work. Thank you.
Thank you to all the candidates for your participation this evening and for putting your names forward for public service. And thank you as well to everyone who joined us both here and online. Strong communities depend upon informed and engaged residents, and your presence here tonight matters. We hope tonight's discussion has been helpful as you consider your choices in the upcoming election. A reminder that the election will take place on May the 11th. Advance polls are open on May 2nd and May 4th. Thank you again for being here, and have a good evening.